Next item on the agenda is approval and acceptance of the March 12th, 2025 special meeting minutes. All of you have a copy of those minutes. Feel free to voice any concerns or any discussion. Otherwise, I will look for a motion to approve those minutes from all the members that were present at that meeting.
So moved.
Second, anyone? Second?
I wouldn't hear, so
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't second it.
I put them together, I'll second them.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, I will call the roll on that. Mayor Schneider?
Yes.
Council President Gears?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz was not there. Mr. Gomez?
Yes.
And myself, I'm yes as well. All right. So the minutes from the March 12th meeting are approved and accepted. Next up on the agenda is a discussion and vote on the 2025 financial recovery plan. So I'll start by kicking it over to Mayor Schneider to allow you to speak the plan.
All right, so the plan was put together, personnel numbers from the auditor's office, benefits numbers came from HR as well as the auditor's office. Safety service director worked with department heads and submitting figures for departments. Throughout, there's been many different changes to the staffing and whether they've taken different positions or moved or taken different positions within the city. We are looking at adding an assistant superintendent, which is what the safety service director and the superintendent and I feel is incredibly important because of our water distribution system. Our superintendent has been our certified water person required by the Ohio EPA, and he's finishing up some stuff and potentially looking at different things, so we're trying to lay a path forward for that type of stuff. Previously at the senior center, we had two contractors that had worked there for years, and they have since resigned from those positions, and we've hired a part-time staff member to fulfill that part of it. Funding is in place for the Montgomery Road pedestrian improvements. The city's share of it, Ohio Public Works Commission has approved a lot of funding for it. We've got a ton of money coming in for that, but we still have a major portion for the city for sharing in the cost of that improvement to our community. We've talked at other commission meetings about the water main going up Montgomery Road that will be replaced this year. That's going from the Norwood lateral all the way up to Fenwick, up to White Castle. It's probably easier to say White Castle than Fenwick because everybody recognizes where White Castle is. But that's going to be a major improvement to the water distribution up to Fenwick and Indian Mount Cafe. But it's also going to be a major disruption in our city as they work on that. I think the most recent stuff we did was some water line approvals for lead line replacement and some grant money to make improvements there also. The Elm Stormwater project is within this, and that is a huge project. Thank you very much to Hamilton County for their assistance, the funding necessary to continue to move on with moving this flooding out of our community and really taking care of stormwater in a manner that is going to potentially save lives, but it's definitely going to help our community and help our community property values. So that is a huge funding. The city of Norwood has had about $800,000 tied up into that project, waiting for it to go. And we still feel like it's going to go this summer. It's been out to bid. There's one parcel of land that we're still working with MSD on, so hopefully that's all squared away. Lincoln Avenue project, another major restoration project with water lines and lead lines going out of there. I think I talked at the previous commission meetings and said we'd like to have the FRP finished as quickly as possible at the beginning of the year, but everybody knows that that's sort of pie in the sky because we had our contract negotiations that were ongoing. We completed the fire negotiation. Just at the last council meeting, the council approved the 2 Ask Me contracts, which is 3278 the clerks and 914 the public works contracts. So all of those have to be as baked in as much as possible into this financial recovery plan. We are still working with the police unit. They've had some really productive and good discussions here recently, so I feel like we're on track there. There are numbers baked in for that, but there's probably going to have to be some adjustments later on. I'd like to say the plan is perfect and it encompasses everything, and you have a demarcation point and say boom and let's go, but it doesn't work that way. But the budget and all of it is sort of dynamic, so we're going to continue. There's people involved. It's going to be dynamic. It's not set in stone. So insurance is put in there with the 6% projections. I'd like to say that the HR department did a great job working to keep our insurance rates where they are, and the health insurance employees are paying 7.5%, and I recall that in years past that number was none. Part of that is ownership of their health insurance, and the employees really are paying attention to how they utilize that resource, the health insurance resource now, instead of just, it was never anything, it was just sort of a fictional number. It didn't matter what they did. And we are working hard with our HR department to continue to work with them to make sure that our medical and health care benefits are utilized in the best way possible for them and their family. And within doing that, we save the city money also. Materials and supplies definitely have went up. Part of it is inflationary, but another part of it is we're actually operating the city much like our peer municipalities in Hamilton County. So we are doing things that we really couldn't do when we were on a shoestring budget and barely making ends meet. And community members wanted those things, but now we're able to, through some materials and supplies, we're able to take care of those things. Clearly, inflation is a major factor in that. So those are some of the big parts of it. When it was sent to the state auditor's office, Anna Mary, to look at it, she came back with quite a few corrections, which there are over 8,000 cells in this spreadsheet, the way this is set up and the way it pulls from different spreadsheets. But for the Bureau of Workers' Comp, there was new information that came in that we could update, and we put those updates in there. A true up, which I had to get fully educated on the true up portion of it, but there was some of that stuff. There were some changes with insurance. ASME provides a care plan, and there were some changes that needed to be in there. There were some salary starting points that were not correct that she corrected us on. And let's see, some of the other questions. A little bit of question about the Board of Health audit and how that works. The treasurer and tax have staffing changes taking place. So if you look at the fiscal recovery or financial recovery plan, you have that first few pages, which are assumptions, and the assumptions have not changed from the original, when you received the original, the general fund assumptions and all that. But the only part that changed from the original that you received was one line item, and that's back to the statement of revenues. But if you look at the first few pages, I think up to page 5, it talks about the assumptions. And all of you have seen, really, the verbiage hasn't changed much of what the city will do, but the assumptions have changed a little bit. And hopefully each of you read through those assumptions. Then the statement of revenue and expenditures, the changes in fund balances. We really went with most of just the original information that the treasurer's office gave us is what we stayed with. Now there was a comment made that we could have adjusted some of those higher, through the process. We could have adjusted some of these up and made some changes, but I felt pretty confident, and I think it's conservative the way it is right now. I think the treasurer gave us some good information at the very beginning of it, and we pretty much stayed with that information. As you work down through the cells, this sheet is talking about from 2022 all the way out to 2029, and 25 is the forecasted numbers. The personnel services are numbers that came in from our payroll administration and payroll department, which is, of course, the auditor's office. Contractual services came in from what the department heads brought forward, and the department heads worked with the safety service director at the end of the year, and then there have been some changes as we've went through this, but this is information from contractual services, and then materials and supplies is definitely coming from the department heads because they know how the operations run. I'd like to say, Noah, the safety service director, and I know absolutely everything about every one of these departments and how they run, but you really have to count on the chiefs and on the superintendent and others to get this, to make sure it's right, or as close to right as possible. On the statement of revenues and expenditures, the one change that occurred from the time you received it to the point that you see it in front of you is, it was pointed out by one of the council members that police crime control, the forecasted number, I think, was originally 168,000, and this is on page 10. Your yellow page, it will be page 10. And actually, it's right by the number 10. If you look at police crime control capital projects for 2025, I think it was a cell that was put in. It was a static cell that was put in at 158,000. One of the council members that was reviewing it and stated that was not correct, so it was changed to the 258,000 that should be, it should have been originally. And I looked through other cells. I did not see where that problem was anyplace else, but I think we're okay with that. The final number for 2025, the final unencumbered end of year carryover balance is $10,602,000. $10,602,000. And the way this 5-year plan is formatted is we should have $1.8 million to $2 million at the end of the 5-year. What we found is that due to the timing of the financial recovery plan being adopted, it's hard for us to get all of the capital projects work completed. When I say us, I'm talking about city, the project manager, and all the department heads, to get all the things that they want to implemented as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. So recall that contractors are trying to book their season's worth of business through the winter months, and basically they want to have their crews fully running. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on getting some of that booked in, and some of it. And we're not willing, on some of these projects, they are projects that need to be completed, but we are not willing to pay, time and a half to try to force things in. We'd rather wait until next year and make sure it's done and done cost effectively. So that's a big part of it. But at the end of this, we are still coming out with a 1.8 million carryover after the 5 years. So it still falls within the parameters that we've tried to stay in, right around the $2 million carryover this year. But it is a drawdown. If you look at what we carried over in 2024 and what we are carrying over in 2025, and then 26, 27, and 28, it is a drawdown on that. And there was another question of how much, what kind of interest, or what are we looking at? We do have our interest. There was a really great amount of interest income, with the treasurer's office working hard to make sure, James Bonzel and his team working hard to make sure that we're maximizing really using that money that's sitting there in the best interest. So, but those interest rates and that interest income will go down as the balance goes down. But that's one of the things that we'll see. The next, after the statement of revenues expenditures, is attachment B, which is the staffing plan and where we expect to be. A couple of changes in the treasurer's office. I guess the treasurer's office would be one of the first ones. making sure that we've got a fully staffed treasurer's office. We've seen, I think, quite frankly, incredible results in having a fully staffed treasurer's office, having people in the office that are working hard to make sure that, you know, earnings tax is done properly. And most people, when they find out they should be paying earnings tax to the city of Norwood, basically say, well, I didn't know. It's not like there's something deceitful or something nefarious going on. It's just basically they didn't realize it. So letters go out and they get things straightened out, and that's what has helped us considerably in that part of the area, that part of income. So, of course, we want to make sure we have that office staffed up properly and that we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. And James Bonsworth has asked for us to fully staff that, and you'll see that's in there. The other area is with the fire department. We continue to keep the fire department staffed up. The chief has done a really great job at keeping people in positions, and we've seen the overtime cut back, and you'll see some of that because he's got good staff there, and he's not, you know, you can work an operation very lean, but then you pay for it in the overtime and the people that are working extra hours. And sometimes they really want that and want the extra money, and other times it's not really what they'd like to be doing. The chief has done a really good job at monitoring and keeping hold of that, and I think the police chief does a good job at keeping those things in check and working. And frankly, I think that a lot of that has to do with employee retention and keeping people satisfied and morale high in their departments, which is critically important. We've got a mechanics position that's open right now, and we're challenged. And what I understand is it's not just the city of Norwood that's having problems with mechanic positions, but it's, you know, nationally. We need those skilled tradespeople, and we don't have as many skilled tradespeople as we used to. So we're trying to get that mechanics position filled, and they've been that is a huge cost savings to us with having those people in place. So that is going through some of your staffing chart. I think it is correct. The next part is the Norwood Capital Improvements Planning Worksheet. And hopefully each of you have had a chance to look at this, and we'll talk a little bit about the very first part of it is police cruisers and 3-year outfitting and what kind of money we're putting in place there, because you'll recall that one of our recent FRP meetings was Planning Commission meetings was to talk about police cruisers. And we want to get the money in place and get police cruisers ordered sooner than later. I mean, ultimately we're going to have we need to be ordering cruisers almost much like the fire chief comes to us all the time and says, hey, you know, to get a fire truck, it takes this much time. We haven't seen that really with police cruisers historically. You could order police cruisers and they would come in and they'd get outfitted, and it wasn't like you had to plan 12 months, 18 months ahead. But we are running into that now. So we're going to be working on ordering our police cruisers a little bit earlier and trying to get away from it. We have looked at the staff, the fleet management, and fleet management is a good tool in certain situations. You know, if we've got vehicles that we're running until they're falling apart and we're paying more money in maintenance of those vehicles, trying to keep them running, then we probably should be using a fleet management option on that. But then there's other vehicles that we should be purchasing outright. If we have the funds in place and we can purchase it and get it taken care of, we should be looking at those. So that is a sort of a fluid area where we're really trying to settle that out, figure out what's the best option. We do not want our whole fleet to be managed by a company that we didn't. So anyways, there's some complexity to that part. If you're looking down through here, you can see there's some interesting projects that are going on for police and crime control. You know, the static reading, the flock cameras. Everybody has probably seen or maybe heard of flock cameras, but flock cameras are a crime prevention tool, and they're not sitting there recording video of cars go past. They are basically picking up a picture of the license plate, and they've been able to use those to solve a lot of different crimes and find a lot of missing people at times. So interestingly enough, the city of Norwood has some of them. You'll see them all over the county and the state. They're all over Kentucky and everywhere. But we're going to utilize a couple more of those.
How many do we have? 10 or so? 12?
No, I think we have about 5 right now, 4 or 5. And they're $15,000 a piece, and then there is an annual payment that you have to make to keep them in place. That's why for municipalities, it's great, we'll put up a few, but really, if you want to have one at your HOA or your community, then you should bear the cost of that. If you want to have it at, if they want to have them at Rookwood, they would bear the cost of those. That wouldn't be the city of Norwood that would be paying for those.
Right.
They are nice to have. They're a great crime prevention tool. I think original, and Noah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but originally when we talked to Flock, they had like 25 different placements in the city of Norwood where they wanted to put them. Yeah, okay, but no, we're not doing 25 different placements of them.
Can the state help pay for any of that? I think that'd be in their best interest.
I don't think the state is worried, but it's probably they've thrown it back on the municipalities. They've got plenty of other things to chase. So,
Okay.
but it wouldn't surprise me that there's some sort of grant or something. They're Flock looks after they do. I don't know.
Just encourage the use of it.
So the other part is mobile data computers, and you'll hear the chiefs always talk about these as MDCs, or you'll hear the cops talk about it as MDCs. These are the computers that are in the cars, and there's one scenario that I had a neighbor right down the street who was having a medical emergency, and this was prior to us going to Hamilton County and utilizing the Hamilton County resources with their dispatch. And the ambulance came down Floral Avenue and went right past his house, right past my house, and all the way down to Floral Avenue, and then turned around and came back because they went past it. The MDCs give them the GIS system, so you put in an address to a home, and the driver knows. If you're paying attention, the driver knows you just went past the pinned address. So we've upgraded considerably. But there is expense in software and new computers and all the different stuff that comes with that. So we're seeing those, some of those expenses come in and some of those replacements and different things going on with that.
Is there a detail of the street fund allocation?
Is there a detail?
Well, like,
on capital
you say
allocation?
you say 1.25. I mean, I'd be curious what streets that's gonna relate to now going forward, if we have an idea.
Well, there's a,
In the past, you've had some split up, like we're gonna do this street for this much, we're gonna do this street for this
You're
much.
talking about the last page,
What's
the
that?
last page of the FRP, the 1.2, yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's a loose list of what might be
well, there
taken
is
care of.
There is a survey that was completed, a street survey that was completed just a few years ago. And we've been working off of that every time. So they ranked streets, and these were the
worst of
A
the
priority.
worst.
These are the worst of the worst. These streets need to be done. We've used that in conjunction with some of the, Clint has really done a great job at looking at what water system problems we have also, and trying to work it in conjunction with that street survey. We are currently, Mike Skelly, our community development director, is currently put together a request for proposals to upgrade that street survey, and it'll be less. The original street survey that we did was very, I would say it was a basic street survey. It got us going in the right direction. Now this one will be more of a street survey plus the maintenance program. What should we be doing on the streets, and what streets should we just be maintaining? And I'll give you, for instance, if there are streets on our summary sheet that need to just be crack filled and maintained, but we don't do that work for 5 years. Well, they drop from being just maintained to being they need total replacement. So we want to. Our first street survey was really just looking at the status of the streets, trying to give us some direction on what streets need to be refurbished, rehabbed, and all that. But we want to take it to the next level, and we want to use it as a budgeting tool in the future years to say, this is how much money we need in here for the next 5 years, and we can plan it out more than just 1.25 million out of the general fund, for streets on top of. And this was something that, I'll tell you again, it sounds like I'm tooting his horn, but James Bonsall, our treasurer, basically came to me months ago and said, we need to look at what residential streets we're doing out of the general fund. We shouldn't have a ton of money sitting, so we budgeted money in there to do residential streets that typically, have not gotten anything. So, but yes, there are some of those. So,
Just a question or clarification with that. That 1.25, that doesn't include anything that we receive in matching grant funds. That's just looking at what the city is paying. So any of those additional funds, it's kind of added on to that, but not at the expense of the city.
yeah, we had said we were going to try to leverage. I mean, from the beginning, we said we're going to try to leverage every penny we can to get the most out of it. So if that 1.25 is used as matching funds, and the matching fund for each project is $300,000, but we can get millions out of that 1.25. That'll be, that's how we should be doing it.
Thank you.
I talked the other day at the city council meeting about the fire department, and the fire chief was there, and we were talking about fire engines and ambulances and trying to put money in place for them. On the capital worksheet, you'll see a shaded area that talks about the fire trucks. We know we have a pumper coming up, and we were lucky enough to sort of extend the life and push this out, but we know we have the pumper coming up. But this shaded area is really debt payment information, and you'll see it later as principal and interest. But we've got a huge amount of equipment expenses coming at us. But it is not like oh my gosh, it's a surprise. It's more of the chief and the safety service director have worked closely to make sure we recognize these things are coming. And that's where, for city council, I'll say we're trying to get rid of the peaks and valleys, where the city of Norwood is doing great and we're all in good shape. And then all of a sudden we don't have any money and we're barely getting by. And how's that happen? Through my time with the city, which started in 2000, it always seemed like we were doing a little better, and then and it was always a surprise at times. People are like, how did we come up against this huge, expense without any pre-planning? And that's what we're trying to pre-plan these things out and make sure. I mean, the chief's put together a 10-year budget for the firehouse, and the other thing I talked about, I'm really excited about, is Mary Yeagers came on as our assistant auditor, and Ken Miracles came on as our auditor. Both of them really good, solid financial. Not to say that we haven't had a good auditor before, but we've got people with new enthusiasm and a different look and a perspective that I think is just really refreshing and going to be really good for the city as we work on projects and plans like this in the future. So those are important parts. What happened with this is the financial recovery plan, after Anna Mary sent me her corrections the Friday before, I implemented as much of that as I could. And there's probably areas where they could be tweaked and be better. But this is a good document to get in front of council. We got it in front of council. They asked questions. There was some good back and forth with them going through some things. But it was made clear, much like has happened in the city of Norwood in years past, this plan is only as good as the people that are administering it and monitoring it and paying attention to it, and we are going to have to make improvements to our plans at times as we find holes and work through it. And I appreciate that the Financial Recovery Commission is willing to meet at times as we go through this and say, here's the things and the reasons why maybe it was overlooked or why it didn't make it on there and how we fix it from there. Sorry, that's probably more than you guys really wanted to hear, but
That was good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. And I guess now I'll turn it over if anyone has questions for the mayor before we kind of move on to having others discuss the plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, so how aggressive is the municipal earnings tax growth?
It's 2% from 26 to 2029. It is not a 2% for 2025, so your city treasurer would have to speak to 2025 number. But 2% is a conservative that they have used in the past for growth in the income tax area.
What do you think? What are we leaving, what are we not pulling in that we should be pulling in, do you think?
Yeah, I think the big concern for us with the earnings tax and not being more aggressive and just the 2% is that such a large portion of our net profit tax, which is probably like about 15% or so, about maybe 20% of our total earnings tax, that's highly volatile. Like we have companies a year ago, I haven't done the full analysis last year, but a year ago we had 50% of the net profit tax, which is probably about 4.5 million of it. 50% of that 4.5 million were from companies that didn't pay any net profit tax the year before. So just the way, but the way that corporate taxes kind of works, like a lot of times it kind of ebbs and flows depending on what purchases they have, or there's many different things. So we're trying to be conservative so that we can ensure that we hit those numbers. But we feel, Tim did the estimates came up with the estimates for 2025, and the 2% is kind of what we want to base on going forward with just inflation that we're seeing. I feel very confident we're gonna hit these numbers. And they were already too, so I don't know if you're worried about being too aggressive.
Here's no, I'm not worried about that. I'm wondering how much are we, if everybody was paying everything they should, what would that number be?
That's a good question. I think
there's too much of a variable in that, and I'm not quite sure Norwood has ever seen an actual baseline where everybody pays and everything.
So I get it.
But that extra tax clerk is going to help for sure. And just note too, if you look at from what the plan was last year, the 4 years that are in last year's plan and this year's plan, it's about $8 million more total in net profit tax that we're adding to the financial recovery plan. So it gave the mayor and others a pretty healthy amount to increase, to do the projects that need to get done and to have the personnel that need to get done in there.
So we're probably getting most of what we should from the corporations. So it's the personal income tax that where people would most likely not understand that they have an obligation.
They've been more aggressive in the apartments and stuff. You guys should give yourself credit on that, because you saw an increase in 24. We talked about this in the first meeting. You saw an increase because one of the things they did was they made sure that they got to renters in some of those new places, correct?
Yeah.
So that's also been stepped up in their department.
Yeah. And with the extra tax clerk too, that the mayor graciously, we appreciate that, put in the plan. It's going to allow us to do even more of that. So the goal is to get more aggressive and ensure that we're getting every dollar. The individual is the smallest component of you have the withholdings, employee withholdings. You've got the net profit tax from the companies, and you've got individual filers that come in and file. That is the least amount of the three buckets. So, but still, it's very important. We still go after it. We still want to make sure we maximize it. But we're thankful that.
How do you feel we're doing with the withholdings, the company withholdings?
Yeah. So we do checks occasionally. For just companies around to make sure that we'll look at we'll basically get either a tenant list from Brookwood, or we'll just go to Cornerstone or Brookwood and just take a picture of the directory, and we'll go start looking and making sure that we're getting taxes from all those. So I feel pretty confident that we're getting most of that. Encouraging the PLK communities, they're probably the largest apartment operator in the area, or second largest, but they're going to be moving their corporate headquarters to Factory 52 at probably the end of this year, early next year. So we're encouraged, and then with just all the new residents that are moving into Factory 52, there's probably going to double the number of residents there by the end of next year. So like I said, it's the future is encouraging. I think I'm hoping that we're not underestimating numbers on purpose. We want to be accurate, but I do feel like as everything comes to fruition, that's kind of down the pike, I think we're going to be in a healthy place. for the city. But still, we still have $8 million more this year in the budget, in just those 4 years that carried over. So it's still really exciting in general, just to keep that growth going. And yeah, no, thanks so much.
That question was directed at me. The right people answering questions.
We appreciate it.
I have another question for the mayor. In general, I look at 2025 forecast, and my first question was, are there any actual months in there, or is that 12 months of budgeted expenses or forecast?
It's based on 12 months.
Okay. And when I'm looking at the personal services and many of these categories, I see a jump from 24 to 25, and that's kind of maintained and going on. What is the general theme of that? Is that raises? Is that, I didn't see, when I look at the staffing, I didn't see head counts increasing, but again, I see dollars increasing. So what is the source of that? Because that's pretty consistent. And yeah, you look at auditor's office, 360, this year 504. I don't know the percentage, but that seems substantial. Mayor's clerk, 135, 162, all the way down the line. Service directors, 238 to 430. I'm just seeing some substantial increases, and I guess I'm just curious. Auxiliary police, police crime, not every bucket. So,
Well, there are definitely increases in our personnel costs, most definitely.
okay.
There are some increases in staffing. There are areas where we have ran lean on staffing. We haven't staffed positions where we know now that they're going to be there. One position being like the building department. In the building department, we've wanted to have a building commissioner in place for years. You guys have seen that position sitting there open. And just here recently, we said, well, we're not going to get a building commissioner right now. We need to get a building manager in place. So we put a building department manager in place. So you'll see staffing in those areas where the funds were not being utilized. The position was open, the funds were in place, but now we actually have a real person there, and those are important aspects of it. But a lot of it is personnel costs. There are some positions where we just didn't have the people, the proper persons to hire. Even within our HR director, we were hiring at a lower level of expertise. As we were establishing these positions, we brought people in that we felt could do the job and do the job well. And then we recognized that if we had a HR director that was actually
More qualified.
much more qualified,
Yeah.
it was going to take more money to have that person working for the city, but we were going to save more money by having that person work for the city. So it's one of those areas where you say, okay, we're gonna bump that up by $20,000, and she's gonna save us $250,000 in healthcare insurance or different areas that she has, then it's well worth it. So you definitely see some of that in there.
Okay, so it sounds like it's raises and increases in headcounts. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, with the factor of more qualified professional people that are going.
Better people, raises, more bodies.
Yes.
Okay. I guess just from a naive standpoint, I'll go back to the head count. Is this like comprehensive? Because again, I don't see additional bodies here. Which would,
It doesn't include 24. So there's whatever it was in 24.
yeah, that's the one thing I don't have is I can't compare 24 to 25, but I don't see any increases of any kind in head count. So maybe that will happen from 24 to 25. But I don't think some of this has happened yet, so.
No, maybe we've added, like, you'll see in here that there's for the clerk's position in the treasurer's office. As I mentioned, the assistant superintendent of public works is a new position that's in there. There's
Okay.
actually, for the lieutenants and the lieutenants for the police department, there are 4 in there. I think they were listed as 4 previously, but we only ran 3 for a period of time.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm guessing then the 24 is where 24 to 25 is where you saw the body increases, but we don't have that. Okay. That was one main question.
okay.
Anything from anyone else? I'll say on behalf of council, they were very at both of the special meetings, very appreciative of the work that, the time and the effort that went into the plan. We did have two special meetings and it was approved. I did have questions kind of along the lines of Mr. Schwartz, and it was more beyond 2029. Looking at the excess of revenue or under for expenditures, looking, let's say 2030, 2031. I guess just from transparency purposes, I was here when there were questions of, are we going to be able to make payroll? And city services were purchasing used vehicles because at the time they could not purchase new. I just want to make sure, looking at this, forecasting out, that if we get into 2030 and 2031, with the staffing levels and the salaries, what I don't want to see is falling back to that point where we're coming back here with what I'm assuming would be a different council, it would be a different, possibly a different administration, and having to kind of go through the whole process again. And I guess I would defer to those with the state auditor's office is when you're looking at that, I know we're forecasting 5 years out. Beyond that, looking at these bottom line numbers, do you see or share any of the similar concerns that I'm raising along those lines?
Your concern is that at the end of this forecast, our anticipated expenditures are, $1.3 million greater than our anticipated revenues. Is that what's driving your concern?
Yes, that we're in the point, we're back to where our expenses are.
Right, yeah, I share your concern.
And there's not a lofty fund balance to support it moving forward necessarily.
I brought that up in last year's budget, the same thing. It's okay, we're getting kind of fat and happy and then we get drunk and just spend. And I'm not saying we're not buying vehicles, we're not spending wisely, we're not doing catch up for infrastructure and all those things, but geez, it's aggressive. And
the spending.
Yeah, and the quick downfall of the fund balance, it scares me. I mean, I don't know if I have a better answer other than to just not spend as much or make a 10-year spend kind of thing if you get away with it versus a 5-year catch up in spending.
And that was
and then the raises too. I'm like, gosh, I see auxiliary police and I see it up 120%. It's like, that could be a body, but I mean, what kind of raises are we giving people? Are they catch up raises because they haven't had anything? Are they trying to keep people? Are they market value raises?
Yeah.
Are they, those are some of the more detailed questions I guess I have. But yeah, I share your sentiment.
And that's
a quick rise and a quick fall.
Yeah, and this is all related to my municipal earnings tax question. I'd love to see that, $1 million or so more. But,
Yeah, I don't mind on being conservative in that because I'd hate to thinking, oh, we're gonna get $1 million and get half of that. And I'm like, well, what happened?
But
good news is always better, but
if we're being conservative, we ought to be perhaps conservative on the spending side too.
always.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you gotta look at the 25-year game, not the 5-year, 7-year window. Plus, I know 2030, I mean, from what I'm hearing, is gonna be depression-like.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I agree.
I mean, high inflation, high interest rates, lots of retirees, lots of medical costs. I mean, I hear doom and gloom like 1930.
As
and I've heard that for years.
As do I.
ITR Economics and some of these guys.
Same folks.
Yeah, and they've been saying this for a while. And if you look at all the, and how much we're spending on interest, GDP, all that kind of stuff, you add all these factors in and they're all very negative. So to the committee, I would just put that out there as a general theme going forward that interest rates will go up, so maybe investment income is increased over that period, but inflation is going to be high, and it's going to be a high interest rate environment, and all the things that come with that. So if you hadn't heard that, that's something that's out there.
Since I guess the question is addressed to my office, I'll speak to that. The requirement is 5 when you're in fiscal emergency. That does not mean that you do
5 years plan.
5 years plan. That is what's required when you're in emergency. That does not mean that you can't plan further out, but what has to be presented to the commission has to be a 5-year plan. With that, though, I will say that in what the mayor was speaking to, that the fire department is doing a 10-year capital plan. That's actually best practice for my office, that you do a 10-year capital plan. But we only show 5 to be presented with what goes with the forecast. So best practice is the 10 for the capital plan. When you're talking about the expenditures here, what's eating into it not only is personnel, but is all of the stuff that has been put on hold that they're trying to catch up on and put in a plan. So with that knowledge, they could be looking at that as a 10-year option across all departments, and then seeing what could be prioritized. That's something that they can speak to and do. That would be a best practice for my office. With personnel, it's very tricky. Once you give the raises, you can't get them back very often. My office, they did take it away from the state employees back in the crash. We all got decreases. That is not a fun discussion to have with employees. I'll just say for my personal, I'm still salty over that. But it fixed the budget. I mean, nobody in here likes to see the money, taken out of their own pockets. So I will say, though, you have 4 union agreements here with stipulations, and there's some things that I would like to address as well. I think that I'll have my time on some of the things that are in here. It's a worry. You got to make sure that you put the people in place, you give the raises, and insurance comes along with that, and predicted projections of increase. You still have to have operations. And in the general fund, if you look, a lot of the cost is personnel is never going to go away. Like, you're going to have the people to service the city, right? You can put other things on hold and stuff. But we have staffing minimums in 2 of our agreements here. That's police and fire. So you can't, dip into that either. In other areas you could, but you still have union stipulations on how you can do that. So, I agree with your concern. I would be, as you go along, I will also agree with the mayor that he put it a different way. It's a living, breathing document. So this is the plan going out with the best intent and knowledge. Now, I would also, caution, as I have done in the past, that as you go out, you got to be able to sustain. I'm looking for the city to also do that in other funds. We have talked about a road fund that is not in here, that has not been an emergency fund, that has taken the cost of some of the road stuff. They can't do that anymore. I'm requiring them to give me a 5-year update when they're looking to spend money out of the permissive MVL monies, because I can tell you right now what is booked in there and is past 5 years and even 10 is debt payments that have to come into play. So that fund is dwindling. So you have other big funds that you would need to be concerned about here as well, and that would be water. It's not required because it didn't meet the emergency piece, but it is something that should be cautionary here. And when we're asking about where funding's coming from, and I get told other funds that aren't in here, I'm asking, what's the plan? So those are some of the things I'm doing in the background, and it should be looked at in the foreground by the city. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, just real quick to piggyback on what Anna Mary says. I'm working with a city that's actually in fiscal watch. So they don't meet fiscal emergency, but they meet watch. They are also required to do a recovery plan. Like Anna Mary said, we had funds that we were looking at. One of the funds that we were not looking at was sanitation. Sanitation over a 5-year period went from over $600,000 fund balance down to less than $10,000. Again, that was not a fund that we were monitoring at the time when we first put them into watch. However, once it hit that level, we started monitoring them. And then they had to make some decisions, like Anna Mary said, to bring that fund balance back up because they were headed for a catastrophe. I mean, you lost might as well say $600,000 in 5 years. That's how fast it happened.
Go ahead, man.
I'd like to sort of change the reference in the meeting from less of gloom and doom to more of we're going into the golden era. But how do we know? I hear what you guys are saying, and it's terrible. It's abysmal. The economy in 30 is going to be terrible. My children are going to, when I retire, it's going to be, there's all sorts of predictions out there. I'm not running out and selling all my money and buying gold because I don't really agree with all the gloom and doom predictions that are out there. And I totally disagree with what are we doing out in 30? Why aren't we worrying about 31, 32? I've been the mayor for 5 years. This is the 9th. Every year, 4 years before I started, 5 years while I've been in, this is the 9th change to this. We're going to look at this in 12 months. If things change in 12 months, we're going to change the plan and adapt to it. And then guess what? The next year, we're going to do it again. And even as we're out of a fiscal emergency, even after we don't have the Auditor of State's office here, we hope to have a budget director in place. We hope to have a person who will be working on the 10-year plan with the fire chief and with this, and we hope to adopt some of those things that you're talking about. But I think it's sort of bad for us to sit here and say, oh, it's so terrible because we're not looking at 30 and 31 and 32. You know, we look at it every year, and we will be looking at 30 next year. And we'll be looking the year after that one. So I guess, I look at it and say this is all in camera. This is not a gloom and doom situation for the city of Norwood. We will address this again in 12 months. We'll be back here doing the same type thing. If some of these people aren't sitting here, James Bonsall will be sitting here. I will be sitting here. The safety, Mary will be sitting here. So we've got people in place to try to, and it's going to change. And you can look out and say in 35, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't have a I don't have a crystal ball, neither do the state auditor's office. But plan for the worst, just plan for the future. We don't have to plan for the worst, just plan for the future. That's really all we're trying to do. Every year, we're trying to plan for the future and keeping our eye on the ball and keeping the city on this high plateau where we're at right now and moving forward. That's really the key to this.
Yeah, and if you, even if you dismiss, and I could understand doing so, dismiss the impression,
Rhetoric?
I think it's more than rhetoric. I mean, it may be just rhetoric in this room, but it's not unfounded. But just the fact that, we're down to 1.8 million in fund balance, and we're still running a $1.3 million deficit as far out as this projects. I mean, that the trend lines would suggest we'll get back into trouble. And so I think that's all that is really being said. Brad and I happen to share a concern about the 2030 and beyond. It's.
I mean, if you got a relative that won the lottery, right, and they win $1 million, and they're on a clip, they're spending $200, $250, they're paying off for your house, they're giving you $50,000 or whatever. You're like, this is not sustainable. This is a trend. Hey, you got to do something before the money's all gone. That's I think what this conversation is bringing it up 5 years out or whatever.
So if this would taper off so that, by 2029 or 2030 or whenever income matches, outflows, I think, that would comfort me, certainly.
I think we look at it and we say, all right, things came out a little worse maybe, and then we're going to pull this capital project back, or we're going to delay this, or I'm going to hire this person. Those are the moves that I think we would all expect to see. This being a fluid document going forward, it's react to what happens and doesn't happen, because we're trying to add staff, add raises, and add a bunch of equipment and catch up. So we're doing all those things at once versus that or that and then that. You know what I mean? So we're loading the car up pretty good. That's my point, and it's admirable, and I'm excited about it. But it's my job to be fiscally conservative and to say, raise my hand and play devil's advocate and say, I think I disagree because, and to make you think and make us all think. So I think that's what we're trying to drive, is just that thought process, but.
I don't disagree with you.
And I do think this number is higher than last year, isn't it? Was that number? I'm talking like the 2028, 2029 number might be higher than.
What number?
The ending unencumbered fund balance, the very last number.
From the previous.
From the previous year, 12 months ago, somebody had that.
For the last year.
Yeah, just last year's version.
2028,
Yeah,
not
it was
2029.
1.786 last year.
Last year, okay, so that number's about the same.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking that maybe it was trending down, and I would expect 29 to be further than that, lower than that. In fact,
I totally agree with you. I also, if you look at your capital projects list and look at a lot of the projects that are on there, they are just clean up, fix up, get the city in the right operating position. So I don't disagree that maybe in our 26 and 27, we are able to cut a lot of that capital project work is cut out, and we do just what you said and balance it out where in 30 we see that our trend line is evened out, and then potentially some of the treasurer's numbers that are conservative, that we see some improvements there with some more income. But it's a good point that you guys bring up about that. And one of the things in the financial recovery plan is even when we're allocating materials and supplies, there's an area where we allocate materials and supplies, and then the next cell is a one-time. So it might be something that we look at and say, this is going to be an expense, it's a $4,000, $5,000 expense that is going to be spent in 2025, but not being spent in 26, 27, and 28.
Sure.
And instead of dumping all that money, instead of it being 100, and now we say, oh, we need to be another 25,000 because we've got this software upgrade or something going on, it ends up being 100 and the 25. And next year when we're putting together the budget, it's the 100. The historical number is not now 125, so we're trying to make sure that we're not increasing in those ways too. So we're thinking about those things, and I know it's not perfect, but it's a big part of it. I do understand and appreciate the discussion point, and I think there are others in this room that recognize that too.
Yeah, if I could just quickly. So every year that we've done, the plan's been done, just a couple points here. That general fund, even though we've always projected out around that 1.8 million, like the nature of this plan is that we usually don't get to every single expenditure that we think we're going to get to. So it's just like if we were to be even more conservative on the plan than we are today, then we could end up with a $18 or $20 million general fund balance at the beginning of next year. And so the issue is that they are trying to get that done. The other thing to note is that almost a vast majority of the personnel costs that have been increased over the years, especially over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, are personnel costs that could also be taken away, that we're not contractually obligated to always have these people. So if something changed and we can't have a fully staffed rec center 7 days a week, and maybe we have to have a fully staffed rec center 5 days a week, in the future, those are things that levers that could be pulled, whereas when we went into fiscal emergency, we had no levers to pull. We literally were so bare bones, and we had police and fire contracts that were where they were. There was nothing to pull, nothing to adjust. So just the encouraging thing for me, I just want you all to know, is that there are plenty of levers as we go next year, and you all look at the plan again, there's plenty of levers to pull if things were to start getting worse again. And we just didn't have that 2015, 2016. We had nothing to pull. We were paying streetlights out of our street fund, like the capital street fund back then. And stuff like that's all in the general fund now. So just want to provide that just kind of comfort, but it is still a really great question if you ask me.
I guess, Anna Mary, since this is where the question originated, do you want to speak to a little bit of the auditor's office general best practices when it comes to fund balance?
Oh, fund balance, okay, well, we're saying that you should probably have around 2 months worth going into the next year, which would cover payroll, utilities and stuff. So you should have that coverage for any fund, really, unless it's a grant fund, going into the next year. You have to be very conservative in your enterprise, because those ones, you have a water main break, that's an expensive thing. I always caution people too, things can change, emergencies pop up, you have to be prepared for those as best as you can. I agree with the conservative approach on the revenue side, and I know there's needs here for the expenditure side of the world, and looking at when those need to be brought in, and then knowing you're prioritizing. So when they did the street survey and knowing the streets that need to be done in order is great to see, because then you're doing that. But they can also change if something changes with the street. If you have some underwater thing that is, not seen at the surface and it's eroding things, then another street might pop up, and so you may have to change. I agree with all that. I will be cautioned too, and not doom and gloom, but caution on revenues. We're going through a lot, just federally and state. The state budget isn't even set, and there's lots of talks on that, and it can and will affect the locals. What that is today will not be what it is probably in June or July. And we have, people that can speak to that more than I can. But again, I hear the same things. I'm going to tell you, my office is going to be, you need to be conservative on revenues. I can't tell you what to say because I don't know what's going to be there. We've talked about income tax in the past. If you have big changes to companies here, which they had, when did GMC go out? You guys are still not at the level when GMC was here.
I mean, we're definitely above that now, but it was
You weren't, but it took a long time. But I'm saying though, if you have big changes and people leaving, we have Paycor leaving, it didn't have as big, but it can trend down, and you have to be ready to pull triggers to then make changes. So those are the things that have to be kept in play. Now, so that is the answer I give you on that. Do you want to go through my other stuff?
Are there any other questions for the mayor or council president here before we move on to turning it over to Anna Mary to speak to the FRP? All right.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to apologize. I did not catch this, but when you guys approved this, where's the street and state highway? I saw it in the Excel, but it's missing in here. So did you guys approve that? Street and state highway?
Highway fund is
Yeah.
not, I didn't, that
It has
wasn't
to
part
be. It was in the Excel and I checked it, but I did not check the PDF when it came. I do apologize because I missed that and I just caught it, so that's missing.
It's included in the totals, but it's not.
It's supposed to be wrapped to general fund. You should see street, a page of revenues, expenses, and then state highway is the next one. It's supposed to show revenues and expenses. I know it's in your workbook, your Excel workbook, but it's not in here, and I did not catch it till now.
So I printed off a handful of copies of the original plan that was shared with us early last week. They're up there if you want, but I was just going to check
Is
to
it
see.
in there? Because I don't know if I checked that.
That's what I was wondering. I recall seeing it at some point, but it could have been an Excel that I had as well.
And they're required.
It did not get printed and did not get included.
Again, I apologize. I did not catch that.
No, it is
in
not
there.
in the original one either.
Okay, so that's an issue. All right, in some other regards. I'm just going to address some things that I think also need to be stated with what the mayor had said about the plan. He had several things that I was going to speak about, so there's some things that I would like to bring to your attention that just as a highlight that I think should be an extra assumption that you guys know of what put these numbers together, and then also some questions that I had during the review. Income tax, we clearly talked about. Intergovernmental revenues, if you looked at it, it was clearly up in 2025. In 2024, sorry. Up in 2024, and it's based off of that increase going out. They had a lot of alcohol license tax, and I was curious to see if you would continue to have that, the beverage income tax, or if there's some catch-up monies that were in 2024. Charges for services. There were some one-time monies that were received in 2024. Building permits is your biggest revenue source in that line item. That one fluxes all the time. You do have some things that are going on but 2024 was more in line with 2021. I know that's not on here. I point that out because we saw a decrease in charges for services and building permits in 22 and 23. So that one is really hard to predict, but we're continuing it out from 25 on at the level of 24. Fines, licenses, and permits. That's where building permits is. The same concept. Sorry. The EMS that's in the charges for services. It's also one that fluctuates as well, and in the past. Fines and forfeitures historically is up and down, with traffic fines being your largest source. 2024 was actually your largest year for that. We haven't seen that level in the prior years, even past this point, but we're building revenues going forward based on the increase. Some things I would like to talk about in the expenditures. One of the things that also needs changed in here in your assumptions, the mayor did state that there's a 6% increase for medical, and on page 4 it says 5% in the assumptions. We need to have that corrected to 6, and that is what's calculated in the thing. So that needs fixed as well. You answered my question about the ASME that got approved. We did see base increases, like you said, in the union contracts. The 3 that were approved at 3%, a base was projected for police is a base of 3. There was actually a true-up, as they call it, for fire in 2025. I would also like to point out there's a Me Too clause in the fire contract. So if the police come back and then you agree to higher than 3, fire automatically gets that as well. So if that comes back, we got 2 departments that would have to raise. Also, in the police union staffing, I believe it's them, in there it says a minimum of 46, and the plan has at 47, which is allowable. I'm just pointing it out. Clothing allowance and tool allowances did go up in the new union contracts, and those were in the plan and updated correctly, that the employee portion of medical and dental and vision and all is 7.5% employee. There is a clause in union contracts, though, that can increase up to, but not over 1.5% every year if they so desire in the union agreements. I think that's important to point out. They're not stuck at 7.5% in the 3 years of the union contracts that are already approved. Longevity rates were also increased in union agreements that were just done. I'm unsure if all the step increases were done in 28 and 29 that I had pointed out. You can speak to that after this. There's a couple of fixed expenses that I asked about that I don't know what those are for sure, and that's in the police and the fire. Then there were some leave buybacks that I see in several departments, and having make sure that the calculations are at what they need to be in several departments, that those can be paid out, which are usually union and contractually obligated. So those are some of the things I would point out, again, for knowledge purposes. And again, I apologize about the street state highway. I just didn't catch that. We do need this changed to 6 to match what the numbers are on page 4. And then, yes, this can change. It can be updated. To be updated, let's talk about that. To be updated, it has to be a full update. That means 25 has to be up to whatever point we are at, to what has actually happened, and then what's going forward. It will not just be a change because we missed this one thing and we just added in. So when we come back to a change, it has to be completely redone, updated, and go through a review process through my office. That cannot happen overnight. For this, it took several weeks to get through. It's a lot of information. It takes a long time for them to prepare. It takes a long time for my office to get through it. We are trying to make sure the union contracts are in there, and this time we had new union contracts to look at to make sure all of those variables were placed within the expenditures. So a 1 week notice, not going to cut if we need to change this. It needs to be a conversation that is happening sooner rather than later from the administration to not only my office, but to Nate as well as the commission chair, so we can talk about timing and when these things can occur. Also, I will caution you, if something is missing, and yes, it's at the best of what we can have at this time, but if we knew something now and it's not fixed, and you come back and ask me later in my office to help fix it, I'm going to tell you that you need to stay within the parameters of 2025, and we've done that before. So we've gotten in a bad habit of coming to my office with last-minute items. Not only were we working on the recovery plan, but we were also working on changes to appropriations that had to occur so you could make the payment to ODOT for the big project that's going on Montgomery Road. That took time, and amongst this and some other things. So I am asking that you take what I said in consideration in your review of this. The other thing is knowing that it's going to take a time to, if this needs to change, it's not going to happen overnight, and we'll have to talk about timing if that needs to occur for an overall change with them. And that is possible with the police, and depending upon what the union contractors approved at. And then that comes into question if that can be approved before the FRP is approved, because you're technically tied to that, for that. So that's a legal question that may need to be asked.
Can you speak to, in the meantime, what issues are current here because the state highway fund is not included and there needs to be an edit to that 6%?
Needs to be an added to the 6%. We need the street and state highway funds. It's two funds that need to be included. Some of the things that we had sent for questions and potential corrections were addressed, not everything. I'm not saying everything needs to be. We'd have to look at materiality, but I can't tell you what materiality is. So, but the two big things really is we got two funds missing, and this needs to be 6. And again, I apologize. I didn't.
So process-wise, moving forward,
Do we approve this FRP at this time? Or do we approve it amended with the street and highway and the change in the assumptions from 6 to 5, or from 5 to 6?
and I guess what I'm getting at is you talked about how if we do an update, we have to do the whole update. If we have to update it to include the street and state highway fund and that 6%, do we have to do the whole update again?
We need to look at where you're at right now, yes, technically.
So, in your opinion, best practice would be then you would not recommend voting for this so that those changes can then be made along with any other concerns that you currently have or have shared with the city, and then we can approve something that is correct moving forward.
I would recommend not because we're missing two funds and they are required. So you would be approving something that is not in full. That would be where I would stand, unfortunately.
I say we know what we covered. We covered, 95% of it.
Yeah.
And then we look at the things that changed and they're kind of like already kind of softly approved. I mean, I soft approve what's here and see the changes and then we do the formal approval. But
Yeah, so we can all sit down here today and say, theoretically, we don't have any issues with this, but we can't vote for it
because it's not complete.
because it's not complete. We can come back later when those corrections are made in the near future and formally approve the plan.
Is there a deadline for approval?
So the deadline for an update is a year after it was previously approved. The way that we've took that to mean in the past, from my understanding, is that council must approve a plan within a year of when they previously approved it. That deadline's been met. The plan's then been submitted to us. Again, this is based on my knowledge of what's happened in the past. There has been instances where that's happened and the plan's been submitted to the commission, and the commission has then voted down the plan. And then there's just a reasonable-list timeline that is given to council and the mayor to get the plan updated again, and then council to approve that plan, and then it come back to the commission.
So we have time for that.
Yes.
We did this in 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that,
So again, I wasn't around in 22. I'm speaking from what I've gone back and looked at as we were kind of running up against it the last couple weeks. And from discussing with him there and looking back at what's been done in the past, it seems like that is the case.
So is the city recognized as meeting the requirement for putting a plan in front of the commission?
That's my understanding.
So there's no penalty for going back and correcting this and then bringing, the changes that we need to make, including the street and highway funds, need to go in front of city council for their approval of the revised plan. And so then we need to get it in front of city council, which they just met. It's gonna be 3 weeks, so it'd be a month before the commission would meet again and potentially finalize this plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the timeline last time this happened, but that is something that I'm comfortable with.
It was done a month and a half, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you need to do your stuff first, right? Or at least they need to fix it, give it to you, then it goes to council. So I think however that goes over the next coming weeks dictates when council reviews it and then we meet again to approve it.
Procedurally, do we need to have a vote on it today? To send it back?
Technically, you have it on here, don't you have to make a motion of whether you're gonna accept it or reject?
Yeah, I think that's. And then I guess the other thing I'll note outside of the scope of this, it was brought to my attention late Friday afternoon that there is another set of loans that the city is going to be requiring approval from the commission for. It sounds like that deadline is late April to get that back to the Water Development Authority. Ideally, it would be great if we could do both of these things at the same time. Just to waste that. I guess the city can speak more to the loans at some point, and there's information that needs to be shared with us to get it to a point where we can move forward with it, but I just want to put that on everyone's mind as well. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments on the recovery plan? Well, not seeing any, I will ask for a motion to vote on approval of the 2025 recovery plan.
I think I made that motion.
Mr. Shepherd, all
What's your
right.
motion?
Yeah, and that, is it
I
to,
mean, do we abstain? Do we
To
vote no? I don't want to say like this plan sucks and vote no and have people publicly think that, oh, we all voted out down. I'd rather, well, I don't know. I'm just thinking of abstaining, just, I'm not voting on anything at this point. I'm just deferring it.
You could motion to table it, right?
Yeah, you can do that too.
Or would tabling it table this document, not the update, and
Yeah, that's easy.
My question is, does it have to be voted down to send back?
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
Or can we just
to mayor and to.
all not vote and just defer?
That's a great attorney question, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney.
Could we do both?
I don't know,
In option A, if that's allowable, if not option B?
from the top of my head, it seems like the safest practice moving forward would be to vote it down. So we know that this commission has not accepted that and that it's now going back to the mayor and to council.
So the motion would be to
vote.
not approve the FRP as
Oh.
As it stands.
and that would be the motion. So we would make a second and everybody would vote. And then that,
Yeah, I think the motion would be to vote on approval of the plan. And
right,
then
his is,
those are-
I think he's using very specific language. The motion would be to not approve.
the FRP.
And then second it, and then we would all vote it down, or however.
We would
The way that-
vote yes to not approve.
Yes, right.
Is that?
That's,
And then.
I
as
like-
long as it's.
I like
I
that
understand
Due to a lack of.
I agree, but-
Due to an incomplete plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incomplete.
I like that language,
Okay,
I am comfortable with
so
that.
the motion is to
not approve,
not approve.
and I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
All right, and I will call the roll. Mayor Schneider.
You say yes.
Yes to not approve.
Yes.
No.
Thank you, Mayor. Council President Gears.
yes.
Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd.
Yes.
Mr. Gomez.
yes.
Ms. Garvey is not here, and I am a yes as well. So, by a unanimous vote, the commission has agreed to not accept the 2025 financial recovery plan as proposed. My understanding is that will now go back to the mayor for revisions and then back to council again. I will be in communication with everyone.
Cool.
On terms of meeting timing when we're able to make that happen.
Great.
I have on the agenda old business and news business, just the continuous update on progress on bank reconciliation and report on accounting methods. Anna Mary, if you want to briefly speak to those.
Yeah, we're receiving the bank reconciliations from the treasurer's office, and we are looking at that in-house. There is some old reconciling items that still need to be addressed and brought to us on some of the questions that we had. On the report on accounting methods, I know this is going to the finance committee within the city, and they're trying to go through those things and stay on top of them. I will be honest, we have not looked at this with the focus being the FRP, plus there's a lot of work being done on policies and procedures that are supposed to be happening. So as we've started the new year, we'll look to come in and start testing some areas. We have some key personnel changes, so I'd like to see how that is, if anything, affecting. We should always do that anyways. So that's my brief recap on them.
Can I ask on the bank recs, what's the timing, what's the turnaround, are we meeting the 15 days, are we still a month or two behind, because that's been an issue, is not getting reconciled timely.
Well, I can have Mr. Bonsall speak to that. I mean, they were getting more timely, and then we had a little bit of a lapse, nothing bad, and then we've gotten back into a more routine, but I don't remember where you are right now on how fast it is.
Yeah, I think it's meeting the 15 days now. I mean, we had an employee that she was out for 6 weeks, a very key employee for surgery.
Yes.
So it created quite a bit of a backlog. We've had a few employees leave. Like this, we're really, really excited for the future. We've got a new treasury clerk that's going to be coming that's got heavy accounting background. So basically, we're as far as the past items. Now that we've had some issues in the past with the auditor's office with staffing. We have Mary Yeager's here now. We are highly confident that we're working with her now on some of the backlog and on some of the past items that Mary mentioned. So
Right.
I feel like I don't have a complete update on that, but I will tell you more progress has been made in the last month than had been made in 6 months.
Is that the first time we reconciled by the 15th for the next month?
Oh, no.
This is the first I've heard of it.
They've been doing much better than that. Before the employee that was out, that was key, it had really progressed to where it was up front and they were doing it, not my office, which is where we were at one point.
Right.
And then they have been in between 30 to 15 in the past year, I'll say.
Okay. Do we feel like we can maintain that going forward?
Yes, especially with the new hires that we're making, the investments in HR are giving us much more higher quality people than we've had before. So,
Are we reconciling cash on a daily basis?
they are reconciling to the auditor's office multiple times a week, and I don't know if they do it every day, but
I would strive to go daily, if you could go daily and capture the transactions right then and there. You tie every single day, and then by the time you get to the end of the month, there's really nothing to do.
yeah,
We do that, and it's like,
I agree with that.
I know the penny what I've got at any moment in time. I don't know if you guys do that as well, but it's it's a good system. I mean, it's right where you stand.
Yeah,
As soon as you got to go chase something, you chase it.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, so something to think about. It's easier than it looks.
Sure.
Just get a column or spreadsheet and drop in the daily activity, and you can check them all off as you go, and it's good.
Yeah, we will have an update for you.
Yeah, it might be more efficient than doing it at the end of the month. Anyway.
Thank you. Well, seeing nothing else on the agenda, and barring any other questions or comments from, go ahead, Mayor.
You're heading towards when we should set our tentative next meeting?
Well, I don't know. Do we have a date that we can set in mind that would be possible for the plan to be updated and council to have approved it?
Sure. If we are we're March 31st, which is Monday, March 31st, and the next council meeting is on April 8th.
Mm-hmm.
That is one. The second council meeting is on April 22nd.
Okay.
So changes to the FRP requested by the Auditor State's Office, we could get that, we could probably get that to her by the end of this next week, by Friday. It's maybe April 7th, the latest, for her review. Council could have it on the 8th and take a look at it. They've already passed, so some hopefully minor changes. Then by the 22nd, it could be approved by City Council. That is Tuesday the 22nd. And the Financial Recovery Commission could meet the end of that week, which would be the 24th or 25th, or the beginning of the 28th or 29th. If you wanted to continue to try to meet on a Monday, that would be the Monday the 28th or the 29th.
I don't necessarily have a preference for day of the week, but looking back to see what Clint Zimmerman had said, I wanted to get an idea of
Excuse me.
So they were hoping to get a letter of approval, and I know you and I had a brief conversation about this earlier, so we can figure out if that's something that really is necessary moving forward. But the commission's approval will be necessary regardless of the letter. So the OWVA board meeting is on the 24th. If we were to meet on the 23rd or 24th to have that approved, I think that would, two birds with one stone would be great. Go ahead.
That timeline didn't give her any time at all to do any kind of review.
It would be finally approved by council on the 22nd.
But she's got to get it.
Well, she would get it on the 7th. We're talking about the 22nd is when, that's
Council
two and a half weeks.
2 weeks.
Okay.
You'll get it at council without my review, is basically what we're saying.
How? Okay.
We also have the debt thing that needs to be approved too.
Well, so wait a minute. Yeah, I understand you're doing a full review. But you just sent me 18 pages on this first one, 16 pages, excuse me, I exaggerated, 16 pages, and we're to this. Do you anticipate reviewing this and sending 16 pages back to me again?
I'm going to request formally to have your spreadsheet back, because I only got the PDF, so I need to see what changes you made of all of my questions, so I can better address that question. Because normally I have it sooner. We go through this a couple of times, and then we dwindle down to where we're both good with the plan that's being presented to council. That's what we've done in the past. So I only got one review. I can't tell you everything that was fixed or not fixed, so I need your spreadsheet. So if you can send that to me today so that we see that, that would be good. And then depending upon what I see there, if I have questions, I will be sending them back. Normally it's not 16 pages after the first review.
So you will have the spreadsheet today, which is the 31st. And then I'm hoping to have those reviews to council by the 8th, or the review back from you, which is granted only a week away from there.
Yep.
But then you still have time, we still have time to work together up to the 22nd, which is the city council meeting. Now granted, it'll be on the agenda. It might be that we show up on the 22nd, I show up at the council meeting on the 22nd with the newest and most updated with all the Auditor of State's information on it, also on the 22nd for their approval. But they'll have it on the 8th also. We're working through for the full month. And you don't feel like that's enough time?
I'm not the one to ask. I think it's the parties that are involved. I'm not doing anything. I'm just showing up on, and reviewing the financial plan whenever it's ready to go and it's going through all the hoops. So,
Well, I'm as a mayor, I'm willing to jump through those hoops and make.
well, that's up to you guys to decide how quick you can jump through those hoops.
Auditor's office, I realize
So,
maybe you have other commitments at this point or something that you can't.
You've been a priority and will continue to be a priority, but I have other priorities in a book of business that at this time we thought that this would be put to bed. So this is now extending our time on an FRP plan that we thought would be approved at this point in time. So that does change our schedule for my office. So I cannot speak to if we'll be ready to that point. I can say if you get those things to me, I will work it into stuff that I already have in place. I will tell you I cannot even look at it till after Wednesday. I have something else that is due Wednesday.
So it's not a priority for me to send it to you tonight.
I would prefer you to send it because I have people that I have worked on certain parts of that they can do some things. I am the main reviewer because I know the nuts and bolts of Norwood. I've been here a long time.
Understood. Okay.
May we set up a tentative next meeting, and the 28th, 29th, or 30th would work better for me than the prior week.
and if we're not there, maybe we can approve debt.
Yeah.
Like have a cookie deck meeting?
I haven't
and then
seen anything on the deck.
So
I know
that's
that's the
yeah.
other piece to this. I know it is a continuation of what you have done, but that needs to come, and it really needs to come from me, from your safety service director and the city auditor, that I know that they have both seen that, because it's not coming from either one of them that the email came from. I really would prefer that to occur, so that I know that it's been vetted by both the city auditor's office and the safety service director's office, and then I need to see documents before it should be brought to the commission's attention.
Understood, loud and clear. I was wondering why it went the way it did, but we'll fix that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I appreciate it as well. The other piece with the debt I'll just float out there is Mr. Zimmerman had suggested that there could be a possibility of providing some sort of letter to OWDA saying something to the extent of the commission is planning to approve this on X date, contingent on that, we'll move forward. So I don't want to get too into the details of that again, because like I said, it was something that we received late Friday afternoon. And don't have the full picture on, but I just wanted to have it in the front of everyone's minds because I know there is possibly a deadline on it. Given that, I think to approve the FRP, Mr. Shepherd, you said the 28th, 29th, or 30th would work better for you?
Yeah, the 23rd could work also.
23rd could work also. I think the 23rd would probably be ideal if that works for other folks.
Well, are you gonna have a final in front of them for a week to approval? We had a draft in front of your commission before, and then you had changes. That is not to me, I'm just bringing it to the table, and that's at the commission.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well. I would love to have input from other members of the commission on how folks feel about planning to meet and approve an FRP that council has approved just the day before, so we will not know, or
Council approved this.
I understand
There are
that.
small revisions to the approved council. Okay, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
understand
don't mean to
that.
interrupt.
No, it's okay. I understand that, but I think even over the course of since last Tuesday, when we shared a FRP and said, we understand that this won't be changed again, council is going to approve this. There's been revisions on that even up until we met today, just the yellow. So I'm just asking for everyone's opinion on meeting the day after that council has officially approved it. We understand that the plan is not to have many changes or revisions, right, outside of Anna Mary's comments and the two that explicitly need to be made, but just want to gauge the temperature of everyone.
I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, I'd be okay either way.
Okay. Well, I think I am comfortable knowing that the plan is to have a small amount of edits and updates to meeting on the 23rd, if it is possible.
What day is that?
That is a Wednesday.
Okay.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
9:30?
That would be ideal, just to keep with the current practice. Does that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, well, tentatively, yes, please do that. I'll emphasize tentatively.
I think as long as we have some notice, we can make ourselves available enough.
I would make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, I will take the roll. Mayor Schneider,
Yes.
Council President Gears,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
and I am yes as well. We are adjourned.